My first memory is dreaming of the horse-faced man. I woke up screaming and peeing myself, as any 4-year-old would. My parents, although not violent, never had that much patience. Still, that day I was so shocked and terrified that they were incredibly kind to me, rocking me back to sleep in my mother's favorite chair. My dreams with such an entity were so recurrent that Mom and Dad took me to the local churches, temples, and synagogues, then to a witch doctor that lived around 3 hours away from the city. No one could find anything wrong. No demonic being was chasing me in my sleep or anything. But I remember clear as the daylight being at the witch doctor's place. She was an older lady with yellow teeth and let out a small interjection of surprise when examining me, right before telling my parents that I wasn't surrounded by anything paranormal or evil. As I grew up, I realized how fucked up that dream was. As a toddler, horse-faced man had been a simplification to something with a long, charred, and deformed face, with abnormal lids on its eyes and making a sound that reminded me of a neigh. I grew more horrified by it as I understood that the humanoid monster was far from a horse. It was some sort of aberration that hadn't been cataloged yet. I didn't see it every day in my sleep, but constantly, maybe once a week. It always made me wake up sweating and screaming. For that reason, I hated sleeping when I was a kid, and I started taking heavy tranquilizers as soon as I turned 12. The sleeping pills made the nightmares go away for a while. Then every time they came back, I would change prescriptions. Of course, it happened dozens of times, and by age 27, I already knew by heart every single name in the soporific section of the pharmacy. Eventually, the dreams with the horse-faced man became infrequent. They still creeped the shit out of me, but at least I only had to see it 4 or 5 times a year. The weirdest thing was that the setting was never as ominous as this being. My nightmares with the entity always depicted him trying to do something normal. He walked in the park, his human legs too clumsy for the overly heavy head. He tried to brush his teeth, but his horseish mouth was almost completely sealed shut, like it had melted at some point. He clumsily dressed a long-sleeved shirt, its stubby fingers barely being able to button it. His hands were normal, but the skin of his torso was red, like he had bad allergies. Everything was hard for that being. It was completely inadequate for this world. Yet I couldn't feel sorry for it, because its horrible cries sounded like the neighs of the horses of hell. Somehow, I managed to make the waking hours of my day bearable. I wasn't a troublesome kid, got decent grades in school, was alright when it came to making friends, and developed a brassy personality that made me a perfect fit to work in real estate. After all, I didn't fear anything but the horse-faced man. All else in the world seemed puny compared to it. I kept going to doctors and searched for neurologic problems, but all of them told me the same. If you have anything wrong, medicine hasn't discovered this yet. Despite my looks being average at worst, I never thought I'd find love. The kind of relationship that goes beyond a fine face and managing to be charming enough. Meeting the kind of girl that doesn't leave in the middle of the night because your night terrors are annoying. I thought I was too much of a hassle for anyone to stick around long enough to realize I was a poor sleeper. But Katie didn't. I couldn't believe such a smart, gentle, and amazing girl wanted to be by my side. And that we had been together for years and she still hasn't changed her mind. She always worries about me, and she always hugs me tightly when I wake up screaming. She never said a word about it startling or troubling her. "Why would you want to be with me?" I asked her more than once. I mean, I know I don't look that bad. She smiled so beautifully. "You don't, but I married you because I always see your heart first, even if you startle me in my sleep sometimes." Katie really did love me, and I'd walk through a fire for her every day. It turns out that I had to. We made a stupid mistake. Katie had been sick, so money was tight. We knew that our house had problems with its old electrical wiring. I was working extra hours to make sure we could pay for all the repairs the next month, but destiny didn't wait for it. Our place was struck by lightning and it sparked a fire in the wiring, making the whole place burn to the ground quickly, with my sick wife inside. Silver lining was, I was just arriving home after a small trip to the grocery shop. I was going to make her some soup. I entered the burning house without even thinking. I ignored as the inferno's flames licked my skin mercilessly, as well as the unbearable heat in the air and how my lungs begged for oxygen. It was hard to keep my eyes open, but I knew by heart how to get to our bedroom, where my precious sweetheart was. She looked so frail, passed out in the bed, covered in sweat and soot, but thankfully still unburnt. Her small chest moved painfully with each breath, her lungs rejecting the poor quality air. I don't regret for a moment having entered that hell to save her. My last memory from that day is tripping as I threw my Katie outside, safe and sound. I think I heard a distant fire truck as the horrible heat made my consciousness disappear. I woke up after a long time. My assigned nurse told me that I had been sleeping for over 4 days. "Where's Katie?" I asked. "Why can't I open my eyes?" "Your wife left to get some sleep around an hour ago. Do you want me to call her?" "No, please, let her rest," I replied. "Can you help me open my eyes, please?" "I'm afraid your eyes are already open, sir," she replied. And just then I noticed she was using a slightly awkward and distressed tone, despite trying her hardest to make a comforting nurse voice. "You were badly injured. You can experience blindness due to the nerve damage, but it's probably not permanent." I accepted her words and went back to sleep. My body was all weird and sore, like I had been covered in wet clay. Even after being discharged from the hospital, I was asleep the best part of the day. After losing our house, we were staying at Katie's parents'. She was by my side pretty much all the time, working from home most days. I hated that I was giving Katie even more trouble than before. I constantly asked her if I was being a nuisance, but she just said, "Don't be silly." But at least my long sleeps were peaceful because the horse-faced man dreams were gone. It took me weeks to be able to move my arms, since my shoulders had been badly burned. When I did, I felt a desperate urge to scratch my face. "Don't!" Katie screamed. She had been quietly working for hours, so I didn't even know that she was in the room. The abrupt order made my heart race like it wanted to leave my body, especially because she sounded so scared. Quickly composing herself, she added, softly, "Be careful. The doctor said it will be troublesome if you scratch it." "I must look awful," I remarked. It was the first time I thought about it since the fire. I had been more concerned about Katie, my blindness, and the financial hit we took due to our house being destroyed. You don't, I promise you. And what matters the most is you being alive and recovering," she replied. But her voice was somewhat high-pitched, like she was about to break down crying. "I'm sorry for being such a dead weight," I said, failing to get up. My muscles were atrophying. "Please don't move, and swear to me that you won't try to touch your face," she asked. I complied, holding her soft hands and falling back asleep. When I woke up again, I heard Katie on the phone. "I'm suing them. The aesthetic damage is undeniable." I slept again and again until I was fine enough to get up. I was lucky enough that Katie's sister was a physiotherapist, so she helped me a lot. Her whole family was really good to us, but they avoided our room and always sounded somewhat cold. It took me almost half a year, but I was getting better and better. Then one day I regained my vision. I just opened my eyes and there it was. My wife's childhood bedroom, now all remolded to cater to my needs. And she was sitting by a small desk, typing, and with her back turned to me. She looked so gracious with a wintry outfit and how the light struck her dark chocolate hair. My body was still fragile, but I couldn't resist. I had to embrace her in my arms. As I got up and approached Katie, she screamed in terror. "Wait, Eric. I have to tell you something." "I just want to hug you," I replied, thinking it was unfair that I had to wait more. "Please, just a little bit before you do it." She then told me that my face was awfully burned, so I would need a lot of skin transplantation. "It was pretty urgent. They didn't have time to move you to a bigger hospital where it would be easier to get donors. And you didn't have enough healthy skin on your body for self-graft. So She showed me her wrist. It was completely raw. I offered to donate mine to you. Baby, I was moved to tears. I'm thankful, and that's okay. I don't mind that your body looks like that. I literally donated everything I had, and the doctors made a mistake when they were removing the skin off my face, she explained. So this is what my face looks like now. She slowly turned, and I gasped as I recognized the long, charred and deformed face, with abnormal lids on its eyes and a mouth that looked like it had melted. When I listened closer, her sobs did sound like a neigh. With her small chest and an unflattering long-sleeved shirt, she could have easily been misgendered. Katie was the horse-faced man. I laughed because I had finally gotten rid of my only fear. The dreams, after all, weren't to scare me. They were a peek into the future that prepared me to immediately embrace her new appearance, no matter how unconventional or bizarre. After all, I see her heart first too.